All right. Thank you, NCTV 18, for hosting and organizing this Nantucket Small Business Update. Today we have, as always, Christy Ferrantella, the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And today with us, we have, I'm Jason Bridges. I have a business hat on and a little bit of a select board hat on as well as your host. We have Jeff Carlson here. He's the director of Natural Resources Department. He's going to be talking to us about phase one, and mainly phase two of the landscaping order. And then Leslie Snell will be joining us to talk about the construction order. So we're going to start off with Christy with some updates.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason, for hosting. So the Chamber's had a really busy week since we last talked on Tuesday, and we held a couple of roundtables last week. We're helping the town gather information from businesses and putting together a report. The Novak group working with to put together a report for reopening the island economy. So we're really excited to get some of those results back. We've also put together an updated fact sheet that's on the nantucketchamber.org website. So a lot of people who have applied for EIDL and PPP are really familiar with those. And I know last week's show went over all of that. There's a new Main Street lending program. And so now we've updated the fact sheet to go over kind of what the guidelines are for that. So you can go right onto the Chamber website and check it out. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to the Chamber.
Sorry, thank you, Christy. You'd think after doing 100,000 Zoom meetings, you would know to push the mute button when you start talking. Jeff, could you give us just a little brief background of this whole landscaping phase one, and then bring us up to date what's happening now with phase two?
Sure. So I'll try my best to get through it. So kind of what kicked off our local phase one and phase two is obviously the governor, when he did his original stay at home, kind of defined essential services and what they were, and left a little gray area into landscaping. And really it was supposed to just cover things like safety and sanitation and essential operations of homes and businesses and that kind of stuff. And then the town of Nantucket, through the Board of Health, took a little extra steps to restrict that a little bit more, kind of in an effort to really help us flatten the curve and kind of keep people isolated and keep travel back and forth from the mainland to here a little bit more to a minimum. It restricted those activities a little bit further, and that's where we came in at the Natural Resources Department. We were tasked with, right, we're starting from zero. How do we get people back to work, get them back safely, and really kind of step back into it? And I think the ultimate goal is to kind of phase back into being in line with the Commonwealth and what the governor's orders. So we were looking at first at those real essential activities, like what do we have to do to make sure that we're not going to see large scale plant loss, we're not going to see big damages to, landscape and really health of those ecosystems and the habitats that, for better or for worse, even for ornamental plants, our animals here enjoy, and need for nesting season, which has kind of kicked in for birds and those kinds of things. And we're really focused on that. And then the phase two was kind of a second step, like, all right, we've gotten past this first wave of getting plants uncovered, getting loose soil from the winter stabilized. What's next? And kind of moving into that. But also, more importantly, how do we do all of those things while keeping a workforce that's, from our registrations, right around 1,000 people on Nantucket? How do we keep them safe and keep them at work and keep them healthy and really set them up to be successful? So that's what we've tried to do with focuses on masks and good PPE. I know we started with kind of single person and vehicles and moved into now 2 with PPE, and really kind of taking those incremental steps to say, it seems to be working, it's going all right, people are following the rules. How do we make sure we can still provide that safety and get people back? Because we know that getting back to work is important, and getting a little bit of commerce going again is really important. And I know we don't want any of the secondary impacts from the pandemic, where we're worried about mental health issues and kind of those other societal issues. And I know it's kind of a grand scale for landscaping, but those are all kind of the things that when we were looking at rolling some of these activities back out, stuff that kind of weighed into our discussions and thought process was keeping people safe. And that's really the main target of the whole thing. Jason.
If you had to narrow it down to 3 or 4 main things that phase two does.
Yep.
What are the big things?
Yeah, so the main things that phase two does, obviously, we're really focused at basic maintenance. So maintaining lawns and plants, maintaining pools now are included. So it's really just working on what's existing. It's really what's there. New installs are still not kind of included yet. So again, if you want to mow your grass or have someone do that for you, you can do it. If you need someone to put mulch down so your beds don't wash away, you can do it. But that's what's existing. If you need to do new things, not covered. And then again, the big crux for the individual workers is limit the number of people in PPE. Making good decisions for being safe. That's really the crux of the whole thing.
So you can't have 2 to a truck now.
You can have two to a truck, up to 4 per site, unless the site is small. So as the example that I always use, if you want to go work on a site like in Nos Shop and those 5,000 square foot lots, can still be a maximum of 2. We want to make sure that people have space to spread out and not, be able to socially distance and do that okay. Big lots, acre, you have 4 of you, you got really 10,000 square feet per person, you got plenty of space to roam. It's hopefully we're, again, giving people opportunity to get work done and timely and be successful doing it.
So Jeff, how does this coincide with the construction order? I know Leslie's going to hopefully come on and talk to us about that. So if you have 4 landscapers at a site and 6 construction workers show up, how do we manage that?
Yeah, so what we're really kind of looking to doing, and this is kind of the part of having COVID officers per company, is hopefully you can identify those sites where there's that potential overlap. Which sites construction's going on. I mean, these are the guys that are at the site for construction probably daily, for landscaping once a week, once every 2 weeks. What we're really hoping is that those 2 COVID officers can touch base and coordinate and say, hey, we need to be there for 4 hours on this day. Is there any way that you guys can keep us under that number at 8, maybe cut back a little bit just for the 3 or 4 hours that we're there. If it's just quick and just cut back 1. But we're really kind of looking to those guys to schedule and do it. I mean, we know, especially in the construction world, you're scheduling subs for electrical and plumbing and painting and all those things that, almost treating it as scheduling your landscaper to be there kind of as a sub and vice versa is hopefully something that people are doing and can be successful that way. Because again, someone reminded me of it today. No one that's working wants to get sick too. So everyone wants to be safe. So I think, putting a little responsibility on the professionals that are working really hopefully will work well and seemingly will let those people get to work.
Very true. So I know there's been a lot of questions kind of why the town is focused on construction and landscaping, and that was because we had been, more strict to begin with. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what the differences are between the governor's orders and where our phase 2 is? Kind of what would phase 3 look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a little bit of the unknown. So one of the parts of phase 2 that's in landscaping is there is an application process now where people can apply for project specific that they really feel that's within that safety, sanitation, and essential operations. So it's being interpreted across the state a little bit differently from community to community for landscaping. Nantucket definitely took a much more restrictive view for lots of different reasons. I mean, I think just our geographic isolation helps with that. So we're a little bit behind in that aspect. I think phase 3 is really kind of getting back with the governor and seeing where they're going. I mean, I know yesterday he announced they're going to be putting out kind of a larger scale plan for getting the Commonwealth back open. And I'm excited to see where that goes for landscaping. And hopefully we can see people be successful and not see the numbers go up substantially, and let those people get back to even doing new installs and planting flowers and planting the things that, I think we're all looking forward to being able to go downtown and see all of the great window boxes and all the great plantings and go outside and see those flowers in people's yards and, get a little bit of aesthetic beauty in a tough time for everybody. So I think we're all counting down to when we can kind of all get lined up and really be able to do those things. At least I am, for sure. So.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I think a lot of people are questioning, why, landscapers work outside. What's the big deal, right? You're outside, you're spreading apart. What's the big deal? At first glance, it doesn't seem like a big deal.
No, totally. I mean, I think one of the things that we really thought about is the safest place for those guys to probably be is probably at work and working out on some, especially some of the bigger lots where they can spread out. But I think what a lot of times what we're missing, and when we're talking about, like I said, putting 1,000 people back onto the road and putting people out there, are the number of spots that they still have and they still do as part of daily routines, whether it's I think everyone sees, you go to the gas station every morning and you see trailer after trailer pull up, fueling up mowers and weed whackers and all of those things. And people are there. People are going to get coffees and take out lunches and, are stopping at Cumbies and doing those things where you're just putting another 1,000 people out on the road and interacting in spots that are there. And I think having some careful consideration to making sure that, again, when you're going to put that number of people back out there, that they can do it safely. I think that's really kind of the hopes for a lot of that, and a lot of that discussion kind of those secondary contacts that we're really trying to make sure that people can do safely too, not just be out on a mower where you can't get within 6 feet of someone whether you want to or not because there's a giant machine in the way. So I think it's those secondary things that we really try to consider and make smart decisions about.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Leslie, that is perfect timing. We have Leslie Snell, Assistant Plus Director, and this is perfect timing because just kind of went through everything with phase 1 and phase 2 and all the kind of the ins and outs. And so, Leslie, would you like to give us a little background on everything? Pretty much you've been working on this 24/7 for the last, 5 weeks, phase 1 and 2 of the construction order.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me. And I'm really sorry that I'm late. I had a total scheduling mix up. So I may not be as prepared as I would have preferred. So right now, phase 1 has effectively expired by the adoption of phase 2 by the Board of Health. Phase 2 opened up construction for any building permit that was issued prior to March 20th and for which construction had commenced. So, for us internally, it's much easier to, keep track of what's going on because it's not that, some projects are allowed to proceed and some aren't. So anything with the building permit can move ahead. There's a maximum number of workers that is 6. People can apply to the building commissioner to go up to 10. That includes the COVID officer. So far, we have received a few requests. Those are being reviewed very strictly. We thought that, the Board of Health seemed to be concerned about increasing the number from 4 to even 6. So, we don't want to sort of go against their wishes in adding in a bunch of workers that they didn't vote to do. So those are being handled on a case-by-case basis. Usually, I think the primary criteria that the building commissioner is using is safety. Like, is there a safety reason why you need more than 6? If not, your request, will probably be denied. So that's where we are with that. The application process has now gone away with phase 2. You don't need to apply to Plus. The single worker registration has also been removed. So people can, proceed using the COVID-19 guidelines. So you still have to have the COVID officer. You still have to wipe down equipment. You can't have more than 2 people in a vehicle. All of that stuff still applies. You just don't have to let us know in advance that you're going to be working. And again, the big question that we keep getting is how many people? And it's 6 people on the property, period. Regardless of the number of building permits, the 6 includes landscapers or other tradespeople that may come onto the property. It's 6 people. So I think that's, really important for people to keep in mind. We want the construction industry to keep moving forward. We don't want to have some sort of setback that, may result in additional restrictions. I think that's not what we want to happen. We want to see people out there working and their projects moving ahead. We are doing active inspections for the COVID-19 guidelines. The order from the Board of Health states that by proceeding under the order, you are effectively agreeing to random inspections. So we've been doing those. Everyone on the job sites have been, very cooperative. Everybody, wants to be out there working. No one wants to get sick. That's been going really, really well.
Leslie, question for you. There's so we have permitted jobs or up people. What about the non-permitted jobs? So just take my house, right? I want to paint the outside. That's 4 people, and then on my cottage, I've got some tile work going. They've got 2, and then that's it, right? But it's still 6, whether it's a permitted job or not.
Right. Still 6.
Okay. All right. So 6 could go to a house and paint. Correct?
They could. We at Plus are not taking an enforcement position on anything that's not directly under our jurisdiction. And like using your example, painting isn't something that we would normally permit.
Right.
That's something that doesn't require a building permit. So, through the governor's orders, the Board of Health staff or police officers can enforce those things. We're going to stick to construction.
Okay, great. That's most of the kind of people wanting a clarification of the non-licensed jobs like tile work and painting, that type of stuff. That's where I mostly got the questions over the weekend, and that's helpful. Thank you. Christy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Leslie the same question I'd asked Jeff. Is we differ from the governor and had taken more strict regulations and guidances. So, kind of, where do we stand now? Like, what differs between the governor's orders and our orders locally?
For construction, there's 2 things really. The number of people allowed on a site. So under the governor's orders, you can have people in groups of 10 congregating. Our Board of Health order number 8 allows only 6 on construction sites. And the other main thing is that we're not issuing any new building permits. Now, the only new permits that can be issued are for projects that contain dwelling units that have income restricted units as part of the project. And that's important for 40B. That's important for our affordable housing. It's important, to get people in a safe house that they can afford. I mean, there's other issues involved with that. So that's why we've opened that for permitting.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make, that we're still keeping things restricted to make sure that our community is safe, but we're also working to not only get people kind of back to work, but focused on those community projects like the affordable housing dwellings.
Question for both Jeff and Leslie. What are you seeing out there? What's some of the either misinformation or where do you see people need the most education? Is it for PPE? Is it masks? Is it trying to figure out how to wash their hands on a site? Is it, where do you see them, where they need the most help?
Well, for me, I'm not personally out there doing inspections, so I don't have a great answer for that. But from what I've heard from our inspectors, the people on the job sites are doing a really great job following the guidelines that have been set forth.
Yeah, I'd second that kind of same thought. I know, our staff, and I've done a fair amount of inspections too, just for to see what's kind of going on out there, that everyone seems to be trying pretty well. I mean, occasionally, and I totally understand where you're wearing a mask all the time and you have it up or down, and sometimes you probably aren't thinking about it as much as you should be. But we stop and remind people that, have it over your nose and your mouth is important. But those are few and far between. We just try to, again, really focus on educating when we see people and we see that, say, hey, just remember, you need to be doing that. And most people just say, oh, I totally spaced out, or I got into my work and just wasn't paying attention, or but really as a whole, I think both, and we see construction sites too, that landscapers and construction have really been doing a good job following the rules and following the guidelines. And like Leslie said, no one wants to get sick. So, following those steps is really critical. And we've seen some really innovative ways for everything from 5-gallon coolers for hand washing stations on job sites to giant bottles of hand sanitizer that guys are calling around with them in their trucks to, wash hands and stay clean and do things that are important. So I think everyone's really trying hard.
And just a follow-up question with kind of construction and landscaping getting back to work, have you guys kind of heard any follow-up from some of the retailers associated with those industries, like the marine lumbers or marine home centers? Kind of, are they finding ways, challenges in this new environment, or do they find it, easy to comply? Or have you guys heard of anything?
I haven't talked with any of them, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, just from my end, having talked to a couple of like the plant nurseries on island, everyone's kind of adapted and has their own standards for masks and those kinds of things, and I think everyone's just kind of taking baby steps to kind of get back to work and get into it. So I think those businesses are adapting too, and I think a lot of them are doing a pretty good job for making that happen.
If anybody wants to find out and really they just want to use their nights to read this big order, where can we find all the information? And you guys have scaled it down a little bit too, I think, right?
So all of the local orders are on the COVID-19 link on the town website. I know that the FAQs are being updated to reflect the orders that were issued by the Board of Health last week. We have forms on the Plus page that are applicable to our office. We are actually posting a new form sometime this week so that people can set up appointments, to come in once the buildings are open again. And we can maintain separation and all of that. So I think, the town website, the COVID-19 link is a great resource.
Yeah, well, I second that. And again, if people have problems or concerns, I know they can email our office or can call our general office number, and we try our best to get back to people as quickly as we can. And we're all kind of getting back to work as well. So hopefully we'll get back to you soon.
So if you Google Town of Nantucket or whatever search engine you use, you'll see our website. And on the very first page, there's a big red box that's COVID-19. If you click on that, it says emergency orders. You go to that, and then underneath order 8 and 9 has all the different links. And Jeff, you came up with a very one sheet basic, here's everything you need to know for this order. And then if you want to dig in more, there's the bigger part of it, right?
Yeah, we try to cut through the legalese as much as we can, but for those who really want to punish themselves, they can read through that entire document and sift their way through it. But it can be a lot, and there's a lot of words for sure. So
multiple languages, correct?
Yeah, we've been trying to do everything in English and Spanish. We've had a couple companies that have helped us and provided us translations back into Portuguese, and we had one in Bulgarian as well. So we offer to any of the companies, if they are translating into another language and are willing to share, we're happy to post and distribute whatever language they come with, as long as we know that they're accurate, but also languages that people are looking for. So we're happy to try to make that happen.
Great. Any other questions, Christy? Anything else from you, Jeff and Leslie? People need to know?
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of what are you guys getting as kind of the top question, or if you guys had the FAQ. I know with the chamber, we get a ton of calls every day of when our restaurant's opening. So kind of what is that kind of number one question that you guys have been getting?
At Plus, I think the number one question is, when are you going to issue new permits? I mean, I think, I want to thank the Select Board and the Board of Health for, making phase 1 and phase 2 happen. It's put people, in a limited way back to work. But, we have a spreadsheet that's tracking, well, I guess now the spreadsheets are relevant. But for phase 1, the spreadsheet was tracking, estimated completion date of jobs. And most of those were going to be wrapped up in the next 2 months. So, again, phase 2 added some additional work into that. But, construction is a really important industry on Nantucket for a year-round community. And, people want to know, when can we get back to work and secure jobs for the future, not just finish the ones that we've started.
Yeah, our question's kind of similar. It's not permit based, but people want to know when they can do new installs and not just maintenance, and they want to get going. That's probably our most common question, and we're just kind of waiting on the governor a little bit, and hopefully that'll be soon.
Great. Well, thank you both. You guys can take off if you need to. Christy and I can finish up here in any other small business updates. Appreciate your time, Jeff and Leslie, and thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having us. It's always helpful to get the word out.
Thank you. Christy, did you want to go over anything else? I know they're so busy. I wanted to get them back to work. I know a lot of people are getting their PPP loans. Now I think a lot of businesses are trying to figure out how do they get their workers back. A lot of workers are on unemployment and they have the federal unemployment and they possibly could be making as much money or more than being at work. Are you seeing anybody trying to figure out that balance?
No, I did it. Definitely. We've been hearing from a lot of businesses about kind of that question of, how do I get staff back on payroll when they might be making more money on unemployment? We've also had people asking, should I even be taking the PPP loan? Some have decided not to take it. The good news is the health department started to do some inspections of seasonal restaurants last week. So a lot of those are starting to get open. So they're able to use the PPP loan, where previously they were kind of scrambling, trying to figure out if it was worth it or how they could use it. One of the announcements last week, which, could have just been something floating around, it's not very concrete, but a possibility that it might expand to 16 weeks instead of 8 weeks for the PPP loan. And if that happened, that would really help a lot of businesses that have been shut down to use the loan longer than just till June 30th. So I think if that came around, it would definitely help more businesses use these funds.
So the PPP loan, once you receive it and can use it, it's actually forcing the conversation with staff. I can't use this PPP loan unless you come back to work. So right, it's kind of forcing this issue, and you can't have both, right? As soon as you use the PPP, they can't be on unemployment. You can't do both at the same time. Is that how we're reading it?
Right. And I know it's really difficult, especially daycares are, closed down till June 29th. And so the question is, do you take the loan, kind of pay your employees, and then on June 30th, have them go back on unemployment if you're not open yet? That's, it's a tough question for your staff. Or is it more worth it to just, not take the loan and keep them on unemployment? And, every business is going through this and trying to decide what's best for them.
That's a great example with the large group, childcare, right? Is how everybody has a different scenario that the PPP loan kind of works for them or doesn't work for them in this scenario. Yikes.
And the EIDL is still out there. I know it's no longer accepting any new applications, but for people who have applied, they're still reviewing. I always give people, the example of the chamber is right there with you. We applied on March 30th and we still have not received information. So it's a very challenging time and businesses want answers. And it's very unfortunate that it's been very slow moving.
That's interesting because I did receive mine at the coffee shop.
Advancements have been coming through, but the actual loan details have not.
I've not heard anything else, which just seems very weird to have money put into your account and not knowing anything else.
Right.
I don't want to touch it until I know what's going to happen.
Right. But at least people have been getting it. I know I've heard of small businesses and nonprofits receiving it. So it is helping people maybe make payroll if they didn't do the PPP loan, or if they're struggling to make rent, their May rent. This could hopefully help them.
Okay. Anything else that anybody who's owning, managing, working in a small business needs to know?
Yeah, I know that the retail expanded, and we talked about it a little bit last week, but just to reiterate again, the governor relaxed, I always call it retail, but it's non-essential businesses. So really any business, they are now allowed to have employees in the store. Previously, it was the owner only. And so that has been expanded, and you can do contactless deliveries. So, from salons to bookstores to retail, I've seen it popping up all over social media that people are kind of showcasing their products, and then they're able to order it and go deliver it, to their mailbox, the contactless delivery. The chamber even did that this past weekend, delivering some daffodil hats and pins. So every business that's non-essential has this capability now.
That's great. We had one comment from Mary Longacre. If employees refuse to come back to work, I think the businesses get to exclude them from the PPP requirement. I've heard the opposite, but maybe that'll be a good clarification.
Yes, the SBA was clarifying this, and if you have it in writing that you asked the employee to come back and they denied, there is a chance that that would be written off of your PPP loan.
Great. Thank you, Mary, for clarifying that, because I had not heard that, so that's good to know.
Yeah, and another update, it's very vague, but the governor did announce yesterday a 4-phase reopening. So phase 1 is really going to be kind of that limited face-to-face interaction, those types of businesses. And then from there, kind of it'll be opening up in different phases where you get to kind of the phase 4, which is kind of, quote, our new normal. The most like entertainment and things like that would be in that phase 4. He didn't give guidelines as to which sectors would fall into each phase and what the timelines would be, but it at least is giving us a framework of what it might look like. And I know that we have Wendy Hudson on the advisory board, and so she will be giving an update to the select board tomorrow, and hopefully we might get some more details as to what that might look like.
Thank you, Christy. What are you hearing other chambers doing? What are other towns in the Cape and the Vineyard who are kind of similar in the same boat? Anything that they're doing that's interesting?
Yeah, so I'm actually on the Cape Cod reopening task force, and we've been meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's been really interesting to hear what they're doing. Different towns are definitely holding a lot of community outreach. So similar to our roundtables that we had last week with the town, Chatham held a community forum yesterday on Zoom and got a lot of input. They had like 3 main questions. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but kind of focused on what would you want to see in this community this summer? Like how would you want to handle events? So they're able to really bring in the community and get feedback, which I thought was a really valuable tool. We're also hearing a lot of concerns about short-term rentals, and that it's opposite. People are actually extending stays and staying past 31 days, which is going to have a huge tax implication because we only receive the short-term tax on the under 31-day rentals. And so, at least for the Cape, they have a wastewater infrastructure fund that is going to be affected, statewide and even locally. All of our budgets will be affected if we're not able to collect that tax. So that was an interesting discussion. And everybody is looking at outdoor models. How do we kind of close down some streets and allow for restaurants and retail to be outside? So I think we're all inching around the same ideas of the summer is going to be very different. But it might be an exciting time to be on Nantucket or the Cape.
Right. It is definitely going to be different.
Yes.
That's the one thing we are certain about. Well, thank you, Christy. It was good hearing from Jeff and Leslie. Anything else before we get off here and all of us get back to work?
Not that I can think of. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, NCTV 18, for always organizing this and making it very, very easy. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.